Welcome, Peter Meisen. Glad you could join us.
Good to be here. Thank you, Shrikant.
Wonderful. So, I've been working with CJ on this collaborating for comprehensivity project, and this is his dream of kind of taking it and trying to make it big. And he's convinced that Bucky is the secret sauce that makes comprehensivity and collaborating using that possible, because he has those kind of core principles, and you can see in Bucky him doing that. So would love to hear about your experience of CJ doing this, anything that you want to talk about. Go ahead.
CJ and I have a great set of moments through my knowing him. I'm on the West Coast, CJ mostly in the Philadelphia area, but we certainly connected through Bucky. And I'll tell you my very first experience of him that I remember vividly, because we were at UCSD in La Jolla hosting the 100th centennial anniversary of Bucky's birth, death. And so that was in 1995, and it was a big deal for a small nonprofit to coordinate this thing. And we had probably 400 people that evening on an opening ceremony. And for me, it was a culmination of lots of work and lots of volunteers. It turned out to be one of those spiritually satisfying financial disasters, but it really was a launch for many, many other things. And so we had some, I'll call it some of Bucky's core partners, and we had Allegra there and did a special ceremony with her. There were some dancers that really honored Allegra's work, but we had a panel, and we were in the midst of this great panel discussion, and up walks on stage at Mandeville Center is this young man with a briefcase. And he reaches into his briefcase and he throws out these pink brochures and he says, "We're not doing it fast enough. We have to hurry." And he was so passionate, and this was unscripted for sure. And that was my introduction to the passion of CJ Fearnley. And we had met probably registering and introduced ourselves, but there were hundreds there that day. So he was really one of those real intellectual Bucky students, in the sense that he had read everything, especially synergetics, and he created the synergetics collaborative out of that, which was taking the whole notion of synergy, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, the whole concept of comprehensive, I can't even say it, a comprehensivist, where everything is connected, everything is deeper, both inward and outward. It's both philosophical and metaphysical and real. There's this, I think he was one of these deep thinkers that saw that level of comprehensivity in the world, and why we had to solve our problems that way. So he was a geek in the very best sense of the word. He was a Linux master, from what I understand, in the Philadelphia area. He started a Linux working group there. I have had several great webmaster IT wizards in my time that I have known well. They were all quirky, and that's a high acknowledgement, by the way. And CJ, I didn't know him in that same realm of his IT work, but he was one of those genius, quirky guys that also was a real Bucky student, and understood it in a deep way. Clearly came from a background of the world game. When you say comprehensivity, he wanted to make the world a better place for everybody. That was his, and I think our common connection was that I am sure he played the world game on the East Coast with Medard Gable or Harold Brown or one of those. It's part of his CV as well, and just came from that place of what do we do to bring people together to collaborate. That's the world game is all about collaboration. that was his synergetics collaborative, right? To bring people together from multiple disciplines to understand all of the beautiful elements of life, and they're all connected, and that's the mosaic of who we are in our world. But we need that to solve the world's problems, and we need that to solve the world's problems. So he was a sort of embodied the best of our um, our IT world, and what I'll call the passion and the high touch of really wanting to make the world a better place. So that's a pretty good summary of my experience of him.
Wonderful. So let's now move to Bucky. So the our entire project now is based on Bucky's ideas. We're trying to say, firstly, try to internalize Bucky's ideas. People like you have been doing that for a long time. The group that I have, 52 Living Ideas, and what CJ, Joe, and Maritza have. Joe and Maritza are parts of both the groups. And what we have is a bunch of people who are really passionate about learning, and who are, though they may not use that word, are comprehensivist. They think that being open to multiple fields, multiple perspectives is the right way of learning. So that is, that community is already there. Now, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to take Bucky's ideas and try to turbocharge it. Now, we've done this with many people. We have done this with Louis Sullivan. We have done it with some of the old scriptures like Tao Te Ching or Bhagavad Gita or Gospel of John. And they have had profound impacts, because what happens is that these ideas are universal ideas. They kind of seep into you, and they manifest themselves in everything that you do. And I expect the same to happen for Bucky's idea. So can you talk a little bit about Bucky and how his ideas can percolate into the common culture?
Okay. Let me take sort of the opposite of comprehensivist and talk about a specialist, and say why that Bucky did not want us to become that, and specialists ultimately become obsolete. If you were a specialist in Bucky whips, you became obsolete. If you were a specialist in making slide rules, you became obsolete. The more you specialize, ultimately, society will and businesses will come up with a better way, a better idea. The whole concept of ephemeralization, and do something better, faster, with less materials, less cost, and make a specialist obsolete. So it's better to be a comprehensivist, a generalist, to at least know a little bit about everything. That's a generalist. A comprehensivist, I think, takes that to a whole nother level. And CJ did that because he was also a philosopher. One of his backgrounds not only was math and a deep understanding of that through university, but as a philosophy. So I think, again, that was his unique pairing of the mind and reality. So he was a good demonstration of that. And again, what I love about those that come with such a deep understanding in their study, but then also take it to practice, because understanding is not enough. You have to actually put it into practice to have it make a difference. So comprehensivity is then the idea of making the world work for everyone. That's the world game, if you will, the whole question, which we will be studying. It's about having everybody having enough food and water and shelter, and ultimately to actualize their potential, a much higher level, that you and I get to at least partake in that at times. At the basics, what we want to have everybody is have a bare minimum. Excuse me, what Bucky called a bare maximum of a quality of life, where they can then start to begin that actualization in their own, wherever they are in the world. So. Um, Comprehensivity is it's one of those words that can take you to the edges of the universe and to the smallest of atomic structure, because that's all connected. It takes you down the realm of science and mathematics, philosophy, politics. So I'm not sure we will get into the all of those things when you look at comprehensivity and synergetics. That sometimes that gets me lost myself, because I'd like to get something done rather than just talk about it. I moved into the two areas of Bucky that I thought were really important projects that had to get initiated, and both of them again based in a comprehensive principle. So that's my own path, and another way that CJ and I connected was a good friend, Doug Jacobs, D.W. Jacobs, had written this play called Buckminster Fuller: A History and Mystery of the Universe. It was the best of what a one-man theater can be. And so I know when the show was either back in Washington, or I forget where it was in the East Coast, there were several places it played. CJ was always there in the back of the room. He was nodding and he was smiling, and probably could mouth some of the lines as well as I could.
One last question: what got you into Bucky? What is your story with you getting hooked onto Bucky?
My dad was the vice president of the local community college in North San Diego County in Oceanside, where I grew up. And he said one day, and I'm a high school student, and he'd never done this. He said, "I want you to come out tonight and hear this guy speak." And so Buckminster Fuller came to Miracosta College. This was in the early 80s, filled the auditorium, the gymnasium there. And he did one of his 3-4 hour tours of the universe. I love CJ's note on his LinkedIn page. He's an explorer of the universe. So there's a relationship there as well. And so I think probably the question asked by the panelist that night, or his colleague, was, "Bucky, you say that the world can work for everyone and there's enough to go around. Can you tell us how that can be? Because obviously that's not the reality right now." And I tell you, he takes you on a whole tour of resources and politics and scarcity, the concept of scarcity, to ultimately the answer is there's more than enough for everybody if we design it that way. So that was my introduction as a high school student. I couldn't have told you what he said. I was not ready for it. Fairly smart kid, but it was above my head, right? And but I knew I was in the presence of a genius-like person, even though I did not really know who he was at that point in time. And then later on, there was a Hunger Project board meeting. I was involved in some hunger-related work in Los Angeles. Gosh, I want to say 83. Bucky was invited to be a short-term speaker at the Hunger Project board meeting. I was very honored to be there. And I think he started speaking, and probably about 25 minutes in, somebody sort of leaned over and says, "Okay, we got to cut this guy off. He's not easy when he gets started." And so anyway, he was there, and somebody said, "Well, Bucky, what should we do? They're working on ending hunger in the world." And he never really answered the question directly for anybody. He wanted them to find their own passionate thing, the one that really spoke to you, so that you would follow your passion, not follow an answer. And so he said, "Everybody should read my book, Critical Path." That was the one he has just finished before he passed away. And so that was my call to go read Critical Path, which I did on a vacation up in Idlewild. Took me a couple days to get through it, and it changed my life. So that's one of the projects that I got started on, as on page 206. We'll talk about it at another time. But that was my introduction to Buckminster Fuller, and I was looking for a next project in my life at that moment. And sometimes when you're in that question, and you don't know what door will open, I read Critical Path, and my answer was there.
Wow. Wow. Peter, I am delighted to have you on board, and I'm looking forward to your presentation on 15th, January 15th. We have Kirby also lined up in January, and I'm talking to a couple other people. So we got really good, each week there'll be a different speaker coming and speaking. We're going to be discussing Critical Path, because many, many people I have asked, what is it that really sold you on Bucky? And Critical Path keeps coming up again and again and again. So I said, okay, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to be studying that. And we're going to have, several people showing, like yourself, application of Bucky's ideas to things to change the world. So thank you very much, Peter. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. And CJ, I want to say hello to you and wish you well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.